So while we're looking for the verse, does anybody have any observations or thoughts or questions about what we've done so far today? Any of it? Observations just means like I saw this, I heard that, I felt this. Yes, Radhakripa Prabhu? You can pass out the microphone and also adjust the camera.
I was feeling so happy that, typically by this time and when you are in the home setting, you have so many other things happening, um, and then your office starts and then you're thinking about what is happening all around the world. But today seems to be like a happy day. I felt like, we woke up early, we do our chanting, we have it around there, we are hearing from you, the details. And everything else is going at its own pace. So I'm not that significant that I'm going to change the whole world outside, which I usually started thinking in the morning when you go to the office. Now I felt like so relieved, happy, and connecting to which we should connect. I think this is the perfect setting. Really appreciate for this opportunity to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a helpful observation. Life goes on. I have a sense that unless I'm there, everything's going to fall apart. Generally, when people are leaving the world, they're saying, well, how will my affairs be carried out? How will my family survive? And so forth. And when one soul leaves his or her body, then life goes on. There's always some trauma amongst the loved ones, and there's a little adjustment, but it doesn't mean the world stops. The antelope still get their food in the forest. And antelope, is that plural? Or should I say antelopes? And the freeways still go on. I remember when it was 9/11. Were any of you alive at that time? 2000. There was an attack on New York City, and anyway, there was a whole sense of people being under attack by somebody, and then the the plane stopped flying for a little while. I live near the San Francisco airport. I can see the planes coming in actually, and then they stopped, and it was quiet for a few days. And I thought, well, maybe the whole world. For about 5 seconds, I thought maybe the whole world will stop for good. And I thought, nah, it can't. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Nahi kashit shanamapi jatu tishteta karma krit karyate hyavasha karma sarva prakriti jargunai, which means living beings are active and they can never stop being active. So I thought, no, they'll be back. And after a few days, the plane started going again and everyone had to go on with their work. And it's a nice observation, Radhakripa Prabhu, that when you take time to be with Krishna and hear and chant, the world goes on. It's not that we have to do everything. And even when we're chanting Hare Krishna, it's mentioned in the Shastra that because you're worshiping Krishna, you really are doing everything that you have to do. The most important part of your life energy, you're using it in the proper way. Any other observations or thoughts or questions? Yeah, Jagat.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Um, I like how our morning program as devotees is to start the day singing and dancing with all of our friends. Usually people do this as like a really like special event or occasion to, but it's something that everyone enjoys doing, going with people that they know and they appreciate and just sing and dance together.
That's amazing. Yeah, who gets to dance early in the morning or even feels like it? A lot of people don't feel like greeting in the day or even waking up. To speak of get up super early. Once when I lived in Los Angeles, I was walking to Mangalartik at about 3:45 in the morning, and it was either a Saturday or a Sunday morning. And as I was walking down the street, freshly bathed and ready to go to Mangalartik, I saw some revelers just coming home from wherever they had been all night long in Los Angeles. And they were in one of those big suburban cars, and you could hear the music really loud. And as I was walking down the street, they slowed down, and they were all looking at me like, "What are you doing out at this time?" And I was looking at them like, "What are you doing out at this time?" And there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, for the devotees, the materialistic life is like nighttime. And for the materialist, the devotee's lifestyle is like nighttime, and vice versa. The daytime for the devotees is night for them, and vice versa. And Krishna consciousness is like a constant festival for the mind and the senses. Any other thoughts, observations? Anything you've seen or heard? Yes.
I find it interesting that you go through this morning program or this morning practice, and it feels like you're preparing yourself for something. It feels like a moment of preparation for something even beyond just the morning program itself.
Yeah. And that's one of the ways to approach life that's very successful. It's a lifetime of preparation. Louis Pasteur once said, "Great discoveries come only under the prepared mind." And the Bhagavatam presents that the human life is meant for a preparation for the next life. Because however we leave this world, that's the consciousness we've developed, that we've prepared before we leave the world, that's going to propel us into the next situation that we're in. We have one more? Yeah.
Um, I just kind of feel like I'm observing like the difference between being in school and being in that learning setting and then being in this learning setting. And I feel like in school it always kind of your interest can peak, but it kind of fizzles out at some point. Even the teachers seem to like, I don't know, it's just like everyone kind of fizzles down a little bit. But in this, it never fizzles down. Like your interest is constantly being piqued. That's what I notice in myself when I'm here.
Well, that's a sign that you're making spiritual advancement. When your interest is increasing and it seems like, how can I get more? This is called spiritual hunger. And when you're hungry for more and you're able to digest it, when you are hungry, then you can digest well. And when you're hungry, it's a sign that, and especially the more you want to hear about Krishna. Jiva Goswami, one of the great teachers from the past, had said that you can judge how you're advancing in Krishna consciousness by how eager you are to hear. This is a sign of spiritual hunger. And in Ayurveda, the sign of health is that your hunger is very strong. You have really good digestion. Which brings me today to today's verse. It's a good segue. This verse has one line altogether, although it looks like two lines. It's one line. You see the Sanskrit at the top, and it says, Jarayat Yashu Ya Kosham Nikirnam Anoloyata. And I'll say the word for word, and if you like, you can repeat. Jarayati, dissolves. Ashu, quickly. Ya, which. Kosham, the subtle body. Nigirnam, things eaten. Anala, fire. Yata, as. Translation is as follows. Bhakti, devotional service, dissolves the subtle body of the living entity without separate effort, just as fire in the stomach digests all that we eat. Let's say it all together. Bhakti, devotional service, dissolves the subtle body of the living entity without separate effort, just as fire in the stomach digests all. And now I'll read Prabhupada's purport out loud. Bhakti is a far higher position than mukti. Mukti means what we were talking about before, the sense that I'm being burned in the material world, therefore I'll try to void everything out. And I just want freedom from suffering and get rid of all desires, enter into a sense of void or equilibrium when I don't really have desire anymore. That's mukti. So he said, bhakti is in a far higher position than mukti because a person's endeavor to get liberation from the material engagement is automatically served by devotional service. Who has any observations about the first line of the purport that you'd like? Anything you observed about that that you find interesting or that you have a question about?
Like what you were talking about before, that we just add something positive when we're attracted to something higher, then automatically we lose the taste for anything lower.
This is such an important point. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about this in a famous verse where he says, Vishaya vinivartante nirahara sadehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishva nivartate. And this verse means, and you'll probably be able to relate to this, have you ever been in a situation where you're doing something that you want to give up, and then you actually give it up, but you're still thinking about doing it? Has anybody ever had that? Okay, I'm glad to hear that it's not just me. So then you give it up, you walk away, but then your mind's still engaged and thinking like, oh yeah, but it's still there, it's still there, it's still there. Right? That happens a lot. Like somebody will go on a diet and it's like, I want to lose weight. They're still thinking about that gallon of ice cream in the freezer. And I know where the spoon is. I could make it over to there. No one would see me. They're all away right now. I could just sit in the corner and eat the whole thing. I mean, the minds and the intelligence are working together, thinking about, and still thinking about it. So Krishna says this is the case in ordinary renunciation. When you walk away from one of the sense objects, it's still in the mind. And this is because when we come into this world, our senses are embedded with their objects. They're natural counterparts. We have a set of desires that are carried over from the last life. So we get a particular set of senses. So when a little baby comes into the world, or it doesn't have to be a human baby, it can be any entity who's born into the world, their senses are paired with certain sense objects, and they have a natural attraction. And people have a natural attraction to a particular set of sense objects according to their past activities and the way they've developed their consciousness. So some people are predisposed to be attracted to certain kinds of things. And of course, we have a variety of bodies in which living entities are born into. And for instance, if somebody's born in the body of an antelope, which seems to be a prominent animal this morning, what kind of things might an antelope be interested in? Grass. Yeah. Were you interested in eating grass when you were a kid? Not so much. But antelope sees grass and automatically its senses are programmed in such a way, grass, that's my food, I'm going to eat it. Human beings, maybe it's milk automatically. Of course, all living entities have that sense of milk from the mother, but then as they emerge, the senses become more attracted to their particular objects. So there's ways in which that we're inextricably connected to the material world. So even if we try to renounce something and we say, I'm going to give up this or that, it still will be part of our psyche that, oh, no, but I'm connected to that. And the senses might still want it. So what should one do? Param drishva nivartate. There's a way that Krishna said, if you can transfer that same sense of attachment to the sense objects in the material world to a spiritual sense object, it'll give you so much pleasure that you'll forget the other one. Not that you'll be restraining yourself and you'll say, like, I'm not going to do it for 30 days, and maybe it'll go away. And maybe you've stopped for 30 years, but then all of a sudden it just comes back again out of nowhere. And it's like, hey, how come you're sitting in the corner eating a gallon of ice cream with a spoon? It's because the desire didn't go away, even though I held back from it for 30 years or 300 years. But Krishna says, if you're able to transfer that sense of attraction and attachment to a higher sense object, something that's giving you much more pleasure, way more pleasure, he said, then you'll just forget all the other stuff. It's not interesting to you anymore. So that's a really nice observation, Prabhu. Thank you. Anybody else have an observation about the first sentence? I'm going to read it again, listen to it, and then see if you have a question or an observation. By the way, if anybody needs to sit in a chair or anything like that, it's totally acceptable. You don't have to suffer on the ground if you're not used to it. Bhakti is a far higher position than mukti because a person's endeavor to get liberation from the material in engagement is automatically served in devotional service. Okay. Yes, please go ahead. Hmm.
Hare Krishna. It reminds me of an analogy I've heard Srila Prabhupada gave, where if you want to water a leaf, just watering that singular leaf will not result in much. But by watering the roots of the tree, not only do you water that leaf, but you water so many leaves in addition. And so by that means you're getting the goal you wanted, but getting so much more and giving so much more automatically.
This is a nice analogy because it relates to, I'm supposing in this verse, that mukti comes, or this kind of liberation we were talking about earlier from the material world, it comes as a byproduct of doing bhakti. You don't have to separately endeavor to become liberated from the material world. When you engage in Krishna consciousness, then you're naturally also liberated. Just like when you water the tree, all the leaves and branches are taken care of. So mukti would be like one of the leaves on the tree, and you don't have to go and separately water that. You just water the root, which is bhakti, and then you automatically get liberation. Is that what you were thinking? Nicely done. I'm going to read a couple more sentences. Ready? Say yes. Need a verbal yes. Prabhu, take the chair over there. You'd be more comfortable. Just sit here. Well, it takes a lot of practice. Yeah, that's not so comfortable. I hate sofas. They swallow you up, you know. Are you better over there? It's always good to be, don't worry, there's not some thing where you have to sit a particular way or, you know, the whole thing is just to be comfortable enough so you can hear. So always be comfortable. Okay? Yeah, yeah. But it takes a lot of practice to sit. In fact, yogis, they practice all kinds of asanas just so they can sit longer. But we don't have time to do that nowadays. Kali Yuga. I mean, you may have some time to do some asanas. I'm not saying that's a bad idea, but just do what's necessary. So the main thing is so you can hear. So it's always good. If you feel uncomfortable, make yourself comfortable so you can go on hearing. That's the main principle. Okay, here we go. HEAR, we go. Okay, that took a minute. The example is given here that the fire in the stomach can digest whatever we eat. If the digestive power is sufficient, then whatever we can eat will be digested by the fire in the stomach. So far, so good? Everyone got that? Similarly, a devotee does not have to try separately to attain liberation. That very service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the process of his liberation, because to engage oneself in the service of the Lord is to liberate oneself from material entanglement. Sri Bilvamangal Thakur explained this position very nicely. He said, if I have unflinching devotion unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, then mukti or liberation serves me as my maidservant. Mukti, the maidservant, is always ready to do whatever I ask. For a devotee, liberation is no problem at all. Liberation takes place without separate endeavor. Bhakti is therefore far better than mukti, or the impersonalist position. The impersonalists undergo severe penances and austerities to attain mukti. But the bhakta, simply by engaging himself in the bhakti process, especially in chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, immediately develops control over the tongue by engaging it in chanting and by accepting the remnants of food offered to the personality of Godhead, also called prasada, which means mercy. As soon as the tongue is controlled, naturally all other senses are controlled automatically. Sense control is the perfection of the yoga principle, and one's liberation begins immediately as soon as he engages himself in the service of the Lord. It is confirmed by Kapila Dev that bhakti, or devotional service, is gariyasi, more glorious than siddhi, liberation. What do you think of the analogy about bhakti being like when you eat food, food gets naturally digested. And similarly, when you do bhakti, it naturally dissolves the subtle body. I'll just say a little bit about that, although I just asked you a question. The subtle body, we discussed last night when I talked about how we have a gross and subtle body. These are the two coverings of the spirit soul. How many of you here are spirit souls? Point to your spirit soul. It's somewhere in the region of the heart. And although we're residing in the body seems like us. As if I say, come here, hand, like I'm saying now, I'm just subtly saying it. And through the software of my mind, intelligence, and the assistance of other forces in the universe, I'm able to move my hand like this. Can you do it? How are you doing that? Just notice that it's like, come here, hand, and the hand comes. You don't even have to say, come here, hand. You just think it, and it happens automatically. There was a movie years ago that I didn't see, but I heard about a very advanced technologically advanced fighter jet. And the person would sit in the jet, and all they'd have to do is think about which direction they wanted to go, and then the jet would respond. That's not so far away technologically, is it? You have a class on that here at Polytech? So in a similar way, when we just think, then many of the voluntary senses we have in our body will move in a certain way. And then, of course, there's involuntary senses or organs that are working automatically. And these all make up gross and subtle body. And then the subtle body goes with us from one life to the next. So when we give up the gross body, just feel and see if you have a gross body. What are some of the elements? Feels like there's water in there, doesn't it? It's a little squishy. And then like there's something hard in there too. If you've ever seen a body the remnants of a body after it's been incinerated. Have you ever seen that? I've seen it a lot because people often ask me either to come to funerals, and then afterwards they ask me to take somebody's ashes with me to India and put the ashes in the Ganga, otherwise known as the Ganges. Although I said Ganges in one of my last posts, and a bunch of people in India, probably Bengalis, complained. They said, "Don't call it Ganges, it's Ganga." So anyway, I've seen it boxes. In fact, I took the ashes from both of my parents. They died within 1 year of one another, and they both were cremated. So I took them all over to India with me, and I committed them in a sacred ceremony to the Jamuna River in Vrindavan. Went out on a boat, poured them together at the same time. And what did it look like? All those ashes? A big or a small box of dirt. So the physical body, it's one of those things. You just add water. You get a little box of dirt. You just add water and stir it up, and you got a body, right? Not really. It's actually a miracle. You can just take dirt and water and put it together like this. It's a marvel of modern nature, of material nature, to create a body for us. But when the physical body is burned, that's the end of the living entity, right? Pop quiz. When your body's burned, you're finished. You don't exist anymore, right? I mean, you don't have to say yes. You could disagree if you want. Well, according to the Bhagavad Gita, when one leaves this body, one, meaning the soul, is accompanied by the subtle body. Subtle body means the software. So let's say you're walking here in slow with your smartphone. Do any of you have a smartphone? Yeah? Let's say you're looking at it while standing on a bridge and you accidentally fumbled it and it went flipping down about 22 times and then it splashed in the water and you watched it float away. I don't know if they float. We can test it later. Uh, you're finished, right? No, because you backed up your phone, didn't you? It's somewhere on a cloud. So all you do is you just get more hardware, and the next thing you know, after you get a little technical support, of course you guys wouldn't need it, but you just sync up again, and the next thing you have new hardware, but the software is the same. All the settings are there, or maybe the settings get a little messed up, but the essence, the information's all there. So when we lose this physical body, which is like the hardware for your smartphone, the software is still there. It's transferable. It gets transferred to the next body. And what kind of body do you get next after you give up this body? This is a harder quiz. What kind of body, once this body gives up, is this body going to give up sometime? When? We're not sure, right? That's a little eerie. Okay, so what what kind of body do you get next? Yes, go ahead, Jagat Trata.
You are thinking about at the time of death.
Yeah, that's a way to put it. Whatever you're thinking about at the time of death. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that. He says, if you're thinking of me at the time of death, then you'll attain me. If you're thinking of anything, you'll attain a situation for that. Really, there's an aggregate of experiences, the aggregate of experiences we have in the emotions that we've developed and our predisposition towards certain kinds of sense objects in this world. It's all in a bundle. And when we're leaving the body, there's a very strong sense of attachment that goes in a certain direction when we leave this body. And the next body is a filling in of all that desire. Material nature exactly reciprocates the kind of desire that we have and gives us our next body. So Patanjali Muni in the Yoga Sutras describes it as the filling in of our desires from the body we just left. So if you walk on wet sand and then you look back, you'll see impressions of your footprints, right? If you were to isolate a couple of those and pour in some plaster of Paris and make a mold out of it, you'd have the image of your foot, correct? So he gives this verse in which he describes how our footprint, the aggregate of our desires, gets filled in by material nature, and the body you get next is a result of whatever your consciousness is when you leave the body. So this verse is talking about purifying or reforming and or refining the subtle body. When the subtle body is in such a state, let's just say you can't, I'm seeing a sign on the right outside the door. It says no smoking or vaping. You can't smoke or vape in here. But if somehow you learn the art of, is it an art of vaping? You have to pick different flavors. I went into a vape shop to sell books, and I noticed they had all these flavors and things like that. It seems like a very developed art or science of vaping. And I notice that people, they walk along and the big cloud of smoke comes out, or I'm watching their car, a cloud of smoke comes out, and they're the vape king or queen, and they've developed it into a way of life, vaping. So much so you got to put a sign on the door saying no vaping in this room. So if you have that really strong attachment and involvement with vaping when you leave the body, then you're given a facility in your next life to vape some more. You carry that with you. But how do you overcome that? How do you get a subtle body that is not involved with the kind of desire that obligates you to do stupid stuff? I mean, vaping's really stupid. I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anybody in Slow or anywhere else, but it's really a stupid habit. It's one of the stupidest things I've ever seen in my life. And there's a lot of stupid stuff here in the material world. Stuff you don't have to do. These are called anarthas. They have no value. And we do them anyway. So how do you get rid of these desires to do stupid stuff? Well, Krishna explains it in this verse. It's Kapiladev talking to his mother. He's an incarnation, an avatar of Krishna. And he says, perform devotional service. It's not that you just try to give up vaping on your own and you're still thinking about it, but because you get a different kind of vaping. Like when you're chanting japa, I was thinking this morning about how we have to breathe in between, and then we breathe out the holy name, right? That's like vaping too. Spiritual vaping. We could advertise that. Because you're like, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. If you do spiritual vaping, and then you're attached to a different set of sense objects. They're not material. They're not connected to the material world. They're connected to the spiritual world. So then your subtle body is reformed. So when you leave this present material body, then you're naturally accommodated with a spiritual situation in your next life. And you don't have to do it independently. You don't have to go after every little desire that you have. All you have to do is replace it with the positive. And one of the main practices of devotional service is hearing. If you become attached to hearing about Krishna through the many literatures like the Bhagavad Gita, if you really like it and your mind's attached to it, it's a sign that you're refining your subtle body. Okay, let's just take a couple of questions and then we'll move on with the morning program. Who has a reflection? Anything you heard that stuck with you? Or a question because you heard something and say, well, how does that work? Yes?
So one confusion I still had was in the translation when it says that bhakti will dissolve the subtle body, is that like it'll literally dissolve the subtle body of the mind, intelligence, and ego, or is it more of like the cleansing factor type of dissolving?
Yeah, it'll dissolve the parts that aren't good. It's like a sorting process. The stuff that is not useful will be winnowed out. You know the word winnow? Can somebody look it up? I think it's Winnow. Anybody know that word, winnow?
Winnow is a verb. To blow a current,
How's it spelled?
two N's, Winnow. W.
W-I W-I-N-N-O-W.
Okay.
Is your word for the day.
Blow a current of air through, in parentheses, grain, in order to remove the chaff.
Hey, that works. Where's the word come from?
Let's see. Old English, from windwean, from wind.
Wind. Wind?
Wind.
Wind?
Wind.
W-I-N-D?
Yeah. From Old
Ah,
English.
so the dissolving, that's one metaphor. Winnowing, that's another one given in the idea of vidunoti, that the air blows through and it blows out all the bad stuff. I mean, have you ever worked on something and all you had to do is blow on it a little bit, like your mouse is stuck because the optic eye can't see, and of course that's probably the wrong way to do it, but if you blow some air through it, all of a sudden everything just starts to work again. You blow out all the dust. Or, with an engine, carburetor gets gummed up. I know nothing about cars, I'm making this up, but somehow or other you're able to blow something out, or more likely you put some kind of additive in, and it goes through the system and it takes out all the plaque that's inside I'm making it up, inside inside the pipes or whatever's in the engine, and then it's clear, and then it can run again. So there's that sense in this verse. The dissolving means it takes away those aspects that are superfluous, that are not helping us at all. Bad habits start to dissolve. That's more likely that what's really happening is the parts that we don't need get dissolved. But you don't have to sort it out. You just do the one thing, and then all the other parts are taken care of. We'll take one last question. Yes.
So one thing I was wondering is that we often hear that the only thing that really lasts is our spiritual advancement, and all these other things that we do in the world, they're temporary and they will leave us at the time of death. But then, as you were saying, we also have this subtle body, which uh, also goes with us into our next body. And you can see people who maybe they're like really good at mathematics when they're young, or a musical instrument, and perhaps that was from their previous practice in the last life. So how do we understand it? Because in that sense, it kind of seems like these material endeavors uh, do last, or I don't know if they're like you can say it's eternal, but it kind of seems like that. We have spiritual advancement that moves into our next life, but also these material things too. So how do I understand this?
Yeah, and I was saying that you carry over the desires that you have, and whatever other habit patterns you've developed, or um, developments you've made, those are retained in your material subtle body. But um, when they not but and when you leave your body, there is a predisposition. I used that word previously, towards certain kinds of activities. That's why even twins, you look at twins, some of them, somebody wants to be in Formula One racing and the other one wants to be a librarian or something. they have their differences in their subtle body. So those do carry forward. That's our involvement in the material world. And that has to do with the carryover from our material activities. So those things, although you pointed out, they do carry over. They're not eternal because, as Prabhupada points out in the Bhagavad Gita, karma is not eternal. Karma means activity, and once we start acting in a certain way, we carry on that pattern. We see it even in this lifetime. Whatever we do, it tends to perpetuate the way we do things. And it's the same in the next life. But karmani nirdahati kintucha bhakti bhajan, when you do bhakti, it dissolves or it starts to diminish the tendency to engage in material activities. So we have this combination. When we come into this life, we do have a predisposition, third time I use the word, towards acting in a certain way. And Krishna acknowledges that in the Bhagavad Gita when he talks about how people are born with different combinations and permutations of the modes of nature. Some people are more cerebral. They're analytical. They think about things philosophically. Other people, they're more towards systems and control, like Kshatriyas, and they have a sense of protecting others. Other people are more inclined towards entrepreneurial pursuits, the Vaishya type people. And then there's people who just like to keep their head down and do some important backup work. And these are all, as Krishna describes, combinations, permutations of karma, which means what they did in their last life, and they come out in this life with a sense of working in a certain way. And if one engages in devotional service, or if one engages that propensity in the service of Krishna, then gradually one becomes aware of the fact that that's not me. That's just my subtle body. And when one becomes completely purified, one no longer identifies with the material body. What's more, the ways in which we're attracted to the material world become completely superfluous to us. So, in essence, the subtle body and all its predispositions towards the world, it's more that we become uninterested in them and that we're not pushed by them anymore. Karma really means that what we've done in the past is pushing us forward right now in a certain way. Like there's choices. We may say we have free choice, but then because of our past activities, although we have two choices, we pick the wrong thing because of what we did in the past. And when we're purified of that impulse that pushes in a certain way, we're freer to make better choices. And one becomes freed from the influence of the subtle body that impels one to make predictable choices. Predictable because one's conditioned by the modes of nature. And when you're non-conditioned, you're free to not engage according to the impulses of the subtle body anymore. So karma gradually gets diminished, and that's what this verse is talking about. The impulse to again and again act in the material world, and you feel as if you're pushed into it. Even you don't want it, and you say, I thought I gave that up, and it comes back again. That the very source of that impulse becomes neutralized by the power of devotional service. And then one's not obligated to take another material body. There is a time at which karma stops. So when you leave this material body for the last time, when you're no longer engaged in karma in your mind or compelled or impelled by it, your only attraction is to devotional service, then you don't get a material body again. Forest fire is put out and you get a spiritual body. And one of the very practical ways is to say that sounds unattainable, but if you become engaged in devotional service in such a way that you don't want to do anything else, nor do you have time for anything else. Then, and oftentimes when devotees are doing devotional service, they're thinking, I wish I could do more, but I'm limited by my material body. Have you ever felt like that? I want to do more service, but I have to take rest now. I read a letter to just the other day that Prabhupada wrote, and he said, I want to spend more time writing my books, but I also have to manage the movement. And he said, he said in the letter, and sometimes I have to sleep 4 hours a night, and I have to use that time. And when you have this kind of inclination that you're so eager to do devotional service, then what is the accommodation for that in your next life? Well, there's only one way to keep doing devotional service without being interrupted, and that's get a spiritual body. So that gets accommodated, and that subtle body that was impelling you to keep working in the material world, it's no longer there. It's no longer effective. It becomes neutralized. Did that help? Okay. You're all great sages. You don't know this, maybe, or think it, but the fact that you came for this morning program, were so attentive in all the activities and engaged, you're already on a very high level of devotional service. Already, because it's very rare, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that there are very few people that are trying for perfection, and perfection means, siddhi means coming to the point of realizing you're not your body. You're something higher than just a physical body or mind. And he said, even amongst all the siddhis, there are very few that understand the importance of devotional service. But all of you, I guarantee you, have very high acumen for devotional service. Otherwise, you wouldn't have come to a program like this and sat and chanted japa and listened to class, gone through the very methodical explanation of verses and things. So please know that you're already practicing devotional service at a high level, and all you have to do is keep doing it sincerely, and everything else, as this verse says, will be achieved by the power of that devotional service. And even if you think, oh, I'm doing just a little bit will get it done. You just do it consistently over time, and you'll be very successful by Krishna's arrangement. What do you think of that statement? Case in point. That means you have Shraddha, faith. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Gauranitai, if you so desire, please empower us to engage in devotional service and also to see you within everything wherever we go throughout the day. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Gaur Premanande Haribol.